This morning, the discussion has to do with the state of politics, with a special focus on issues that surround the Democratic Alliance. That party has been facing criticism as a wave of black leaders have left recently. The DA also dealing with challenges in various municipalities where it's governing through a coalition, and these include provinces like Gauteng. Let's get more on this now about the state of that party, and we speak to its national spokesperson, Solly Malatsi, who joins us from Limpopo. Solly, good morning to you. Let's start with the state of the Democratic Alliance. Is it fair to characterize your party as being in crisis at the moment? And we say that because the exodus of young black leaders has not stopped. It continues. Tell us what's going on in the DA at the moment.
Thanks very much, Solly, and it's a pleasure to be back on your show. Look, I think to characterize it, as in crisis would be unfair, because when you look at the caliber of the leadership that remains in the DA, we still have very strong, talented, diverse individuals that are serving still at the highest levels of the DA. But it can never be a source of celebration when people who have occupied leadership positions in the party leave for whatever their reasons may be. And it is important to note, that people evolve, and when people join political parties for a variety of reasons. So if during their natural evolution they come to a conclusion that they can no longer associate with the party for whatever their reasons are, our focus is that we still have a large contingent of people that believe in the Democratic Alliance and believe in the vision for the DA, for our country. And it is important that those individuals that remain in the organization and are still committed to the mission of the party continue with our work. And, in line of what you just said in your question, I mean, you can look at it in different ways. There are people who have left, and all of them have articulated different reasons for their departures. Equally, at the same time, there's been a rise of new leadership that has prevailed in the Democratic Alliance. If you look at, the emergence of people like Siviwe Gwahube, who was appointed our chief whip in the National Assembly, that shows, that the depth of talent and the depth of leadership in the organization is still there. So we are a party that has we are a strong institution that is not beset by, sporadic individuals leaving, because, we've got a very strong operational machinery that continues to hold the organization together.
Solly, if I wasn't any more educated about the DA, I would let you scot-free about those comments that you made, that these are just individuals who are leaving the party. These are not just individuals, Solly. These are not sporadic individuals, as you put it. These are people with 20 years worth of experience, Magashule, Ghana, and you name them. They're leaving the DA because they're saying it no longer represents their aspirations. So, again, I'm going to put the question to you.
Sure.
Why is it that young, innovative black leaders are leaving the Democratic Alliance, and don't use Siviwe Gwahube as an example of growth? Because some people have actually read that as some kind of cosmetic makeup, if you like, because the DA is desperate to be seen to be putting black leaders in positions that matter.
No, Solly, and this is where I disagree, because your framing of it was, it's an exodus, and an exodus comes to a large number of, or groupings, or a large group that is departing. And in this instance, and that's why, when you prefaced your question was it fair to look at it that way? And I'm, arguing that it isn't fair, because when you look at the caliber of leadership that remains, The DA is still, the largest opposition party. We still have, leadership, across all different provinces. That's why I said we cannot clothe when people leave, because you are bigger with more people. But naturally, people evolve. And when people leave, it is far more important, to take the lessons from there and to focus on the talent that you have in the party and build up. And I think it is the unfair criticism that often when, analysts and the media looks at the DA, when you look at departures, you punt that it is black leaders that are leaving. But when another black person rises to a senior leadership role, you try to downplay that and say it's a cosmetic issue. It's not a cosmetic issue. Sibuwe Gwakhube was the deputy chief whip of the Democratic Alliance for the past year and a half. And the natural progression for someone who has done excellently well in that role was, the appointment into the chief whip's role. So when we look at that, I think it is equally fair to look at that in totality, so that we do not extrapolate the departures of black leaders to downplay the rise of other black leaders across the provinces that are there, that are working daily, and who have, by the way, rightfully earned their rise within the party through their work ethic, through their hard work, and through grabbing opportunities that had been presented to them.
Very briefly on it, because we need to talk about the state of coalition government where you lead. So if I were to ask you very briefly why it is that black leaders are leaving, then what's your response?
Look, I think, as I said from the beginning, people have made different, statements regarding their departures, and some of them are very questionable because some of them, are from individuals who were in the process of facing ongoing investigations which had not been concluded. And, it is not up for me to speak on behalf of people who have left, because I'm not the national spokesperson for former members of
Are you suggesting that there may have been some kind of investigation against Magashule Ghana and therefore he left? Is that what you're
No, I'm referring in this case in particularly to Andrew Law from the Northern Cape.
Okay, let's talk coalition governance. Is there a crisis there?
Look, coalition governments are very fragile. And we have learned to accept that, particularly in the metros, they are very fragile, and we seem to be facing a very coordinated effort. If you look at the events of the past 2 weeks and how a series of motions of no confidence were planned and put into the pipeline. Some of those did not prevail, as in Tshwane, and the one that was also aborted as in Ekurhuleni. And I think, the reality is that as we get closer to 2024, we're going to see, different political parties coalescing against the coalition government or trying to leverage their stake in their coalition governments. And that's what makes them very difficult to manage and to hold, particularly also because we've got political parties that are also constantly, such as the EFF, looking to change the initial support, which was they would vote on a vote-by-vote basis, and now, making pronouncement elsewhere, as in KZN and in Gauteng, if we're to consider media reports, that they are now willing to enter with the ANC. So it's a very fragile period. But, from us, the intention is to make them work for as long as they are able to work, because we still have that responsibility as, the leading party in the multi-party coalition governments to make them work. But they are very fragile, Tony.
While we accept that they are fragile, Solly, there is no explanation, though, for what the mayor in Tshwane has done, Randall Williams, and that is to do things not in accordance with the prescripts of the law. Why has it done that? And what should voters make now of the Democratic Alliance's style of governance? You always say wherever you govern with a clean sheet. Why is that acceptable, what Randall Williams has done?
Look, I think it is important to contextualize that so that because the biggest error that has been done in the coverage of this story is to allude or insinuate that, there was some law broken or that the mayor was advocating for some illegal transaction, which wasn't the case. Which wasn't the case at all. The mayor was, trying to explore the city's options in terms of, its power generation so that it has, a diverse element of power generation. The DA would never condone any of its representatives in government getting into any illegal transaction or being a proponent of breaking the law. And this isn't what happened in this case. And I think, if you listen clearly to that recording, there is no intention or explicit explanation whatsoever to break the law.
So you accept his explanation and you feel that he's done nothing wrong?
No, as the party, we are satisfied with the reasons that Randall has explained to the party in terms of what was the purpose of that conversation and intentions. And we believe that there hasn't been any law broken that would have compromised him ethically, nor the city ethically.
Let's then talk about whether or not the Democratic Alliance is still intent on going into a coalition with an ANC that is led by Cyril Ramaphosa, should that party come below 50% in 2024?
Look, the DA exists. One of our primary reasons to exist is that we want to see the ANC out of government. There hasn't been any structure of the DA that has to date resolved to enter into any coalition government with one part of the ANC.
Is the DA still prepared to go into a coalition government with the ANC that is specifically led by Cyril Ramaphosa in 2024?
The DA has no position whatsoever currently of entering into a coalition with an ANC led by Cyril Ramaphosa or one part of the ANC.
So what DA leader John Steenhuisen said 18 months ago, that was a misspeak on his part. Is that what you say?
No, I think, it's always key to refer back to interviews in their full context. The thing about coalitions is you do not preempt how to enter into coalitions because, again, at the very time of negotiations, what you consider are, one, do our values align with the options that are on the table for us? And where they do not align, we do not enter into any agreement whatsoever. And this is why, again, we are not into any formal coalition agreement with the EFF because our values do not align.
Solly, do you want me to remind you what John Steenhuisen said 18 months ago? And I want to quote directly. Could we work with the ANC? Yes, absolutely. That was John speaking 18 months ago. What's changed?
Yeah, but you're referring to coalitions, and it's considering a possibility. As I said, there is no formal position from the DA of getting into a coalition with the ANC. You consider getting into coalitions from the ANC, you'll have to get a mandate from the Federal Executive of the DA and the Federal Council of the DA once the results of the elections have been released.
So John spoke out of turn? Spoke out of turn?
No, I think John was responding to a specific question at that time. And that question was not speaking about whether the DA has a position or not. It was saying, if you were to explore the opportunities at the table, could you consider? And it wasn't a definitive binding obligation from the DA side.
Solly Malatsi, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
For the Democratic Alliance. Very fantastic discussion.